There's a question that I get asked every once in a while, and that is the wedding industry space a viable one? Wedding event based businesses viable? So I get those questions all the time. Is it a good space to play in, to be a wedding photographer, to be a makeup artist, to be an event planner, and on and on? My response to the question has always been that, well, it's one of those qualified answers that I usually give. So, of course, there has to be a certain level of demand for a business to be viable. There has to be a certain sense of market appeal or cultural appeal for a business to succeed. So, if I want to sell seashells, but for some reason there is no market demand or public appreciation for seashells, and I'm not going to be able to invest the time and attention that would be able to build a viable market out of that, then really there's nothing I can do, no matter how I love seashells or whatever I think about them. So, yes, on that practical level, yes, there has to be a certain level of cultural appeal or market demand before some things kick off. I'm assuming, of course, that you're not in the position to be one of those people who can create a demand for certain things, like, let's say, portable computing. There was no real market for portable computing until computer companies found ways to embed games and apps that regular citizens like you and I could use, and then that created the market, basically. So, yes, there has to be a certain level of consumer appreciation, market appreciation. So, given that we already have that in place now, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, even though we felt the tremors of COVID and people having smaller weddings and, basically downsizing their ambitions when it comes to having weddings, I still don't think that this industry is going to go away anytime soon. So that is one of the qualifications that I bring to it when people ask me the question. However, the part that I like to stress the most, and I think is the part that people pay the least attention to, is the fact that really any business is viable so long as you have the sales chops to pull it off, so long as you're able to generate marketing buzz, you're able to look for clients, those sorts of things. I think that is the key determinant that people should be looking at when they talk about getting into the wedding industry. And it's the same for other industries, no matter what industry you are involved in. Because I remember early on when my brother and I got involved, that's with our partner David, got involved in the export business. It also was a question that people would ask a lot. Is there money in exporting charcoal? Is there money in exporting sesame? Why are you guys looking at the production of shea butter? Is there money in that? So there was always, is there money in this kind of question? And the answer has always been the same, and that is the second part. Well, there is money in it if you do have the skill to be able to go out and look for that money and drive sales. Because one of the most interesting eye-opening experiences that I had was to run into someone who is a former parishioner of our old church. That's back in Lagos before I made the full move to Abuja. That's St. Leo's parish in Ikeja in Lagos. So it was really interesting running into this fellow who makes a living off selling the petals of hibiscus. I think hibiscus, yes, I think that's what he does. And then he ships these things off to, I think, is it Brazil and India? I can't really remember, but bottom line is there are people in this country, Nigeria, who are making a living off of shipping hibiscus petals. I mean, I found it absolutely mind-blowing. I'd have loved to speak to him some more about it, but at the time he seemed like a really busy fellow, and I just thought maybe there's no point in pushing it any further, since it's not like I was interested in getting into the business. I was just curious and mind blown as to how somebody can make a living selling hibiscus petals. Because first of all, the typical Nigerian chap in me wondered, where do you find enough rose petals in the first place to begin exporting them? And then how do you find people that are interested in buying rose petals, hibiscus petals? Well, I did find out as much that these sorts of things, the petals of a hibiscus flower or the rose flower, I can't remember which. This was a conversation that we had a long time ago, maybe 4 or 5 years back, can be used in different things, perfuming, ornaments for cars or in houses, potpourri, all kinds of stuff. But bottom line is, I had no idea that people could export these sorts of things, and sometimes export up to a container load. And in fact, I found it even scary, because we had a failed run at having what's it called? Cashew, yes, at selling cashew for processing for ethanol. And the problem that we had was, once the cashew gets dug up from the ground, if it gets scratched, then the rate of decay, it would still be good for human consumption, but because of its chemical properties, if it gets scratched, there's something in it that starts to decay quickly in time, and so it makes it unsuitable for producing optimal levels of ethanol. And so because of that, we basically had a stash that I think lasted 2 or 3 days in the field, and the only thing we could sell it for was for human consumption, and so we didn't reap the kind of reward that we wanted to. And well, since then, basically we've been afraid of dabbling in stuff that isn't stuff that degrades too quickly, and I imagine that rose petals will be in that type of situation. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent again as usual, but the bottom line that I'm trying to make is that just as it depends on how good you are at selling and finding people who need your product when it comes to selling rose petals, it's also the same for the wedding industry, or the same for whether you dabble in cashew, whether you sell it for food, whether you sell it for food or for processing secondary byproducts out of it. So yeah, it depends. So a whole lot of it depends on you and not necessarily the industry in question. So the next time somebody asks you that question, I think these are the qualifications that you have to bring to it, because a lot of people want to hear a blanket yes, get involved in the industry, it's hot right now, or they want to hear a no, this is a poor industry, don't get involved. But the key determinant, once we've gotten past the cultural acceptance and a general awareness of the need of a product, the key determinant is going to be you and your ability to sell, which is one of the reasons why I've started this podcast in the first place, and then the other online assets that I use, like the LinkedIn sales conversation handle, the Instagram sales conversation handle, and then the LinkedIn profile and all of that. So, sorry, forgive me, guys. I have a cold, and not to fear, don't worry, it's not COVID related. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so that's the main reason why I'm going on about this this gospel, more or less, because there are a lot of people that come into the industry and then they crash out, and then they start saying things like the wedding industry is not good, or brides and grooms are not serious, or there's too much competition in the market, everything is commoditized and stuff like that. And the problem is not with the industry per se, the problem is with you. So if you come in and you think this is a difficult space to be in because it is commoditized, then the challenge isn't that it's commoditized per se, but the challenge has to be, how do you distinguish yourself? How do you differentiate yourself? That has always been the key thing when you're dealing in spaces that seem commoditized. And I have bad news for folks like you who are running away from the commoditization problem. It's the same everywhere. For those of you who are regular listeners to the podcast, you know that I do some stuff with Seed Builders Tech Hub. But think about it. Even in the Abuja space, one can complain that excuse me, guys. One can complain that the tech hub space in Abuja is already overcrowded and commoditized, which is not. And if we can say the same for Abuja, then think about what it's going to be like for those people who are based in Lagos and Port Harcourt, places that are arguably more tech savvy than quiet Abuja. So we have Seed Builders, we have the Tech Hub, Seed Builders, Civic, Avon, Ventures Park, and I've already counted off 4 or 5 that I know personally, and I don't get out and about that much, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are a whole lot more. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you run a tech hub, if you're a wedding photographer, if you're involved in public relations, or if you're a journalist, or if you offer horticultural services, you sell flowers or whatever, everything has been commoditized these days, because the access to education is that you need to get involved in these businesses can be acquired quite freely, because everyone has access to YouTube and to Google, so you can get all the information that you need. Or you can readily find someone who will affordably teach you about your chosen skill or whatever it is that you want to do. So the challenge isn't that industries are commoditized. The challenge is you haven't upped your sales game, and so you don't know how to distinguish yourself in your marketing, and you don't know how to communicate the value that you bring to the table when you are having the actual sales conversations in person, over the phone, or via email. So those are the qualifications that I bring to that answer when people ask, is there money in the wedding industry? Yes, there's money in the wedding industry, but also in the same way that there's also money in the export industry for people who are exporting snails, or exporting fish, exporting charcoal, or exporting rose petals, of all things. So there's money to be made everywhere. The key thing is, do you know how to find people who have the money? Do you know how to have the right marketing and branding conversations? Do you know how to have those valuable sales conversations when you're one-on-one on folks? Those are the key things that you need to pay attention to. So if there's anyone here listening to the podcast who would like to get involved in the wedding business, and you're listening to this because you're looking for some sort of validation that this industry is worthwhile, I would say don't wait for too long. The determining factor is not going to be the industry per se. The determining factor is going to be you. So work on your you game, work on your sales game, work on your branding, work on your marketing, work on all those soft things, and everything will be fine. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based photographer, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.